In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
The ruling on the field stands.
We deliver jerseys, funny foam fingers, and everything you need for the game. But what you really get is so much more.
FedEx Delivery.
Game day spirit. What we deliver by delivering.
Welcome to the Daily Memphian Tigers podcast. I'm Jonah Jordan, the Memphis Tigers football beat writer around these parts, and I'm joined today by Drew Hill, our basketball writer, and our columnist, Geoff Calkins. How are y'all doing today?
Dandy.
You're that good.
I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm surviving. This is my flu game podcast right here.
Nobody likes a complainer, Drew.
I said I'm surviving. I'm doing good.
He's still complaining. But we're going to have a football-heavy podcast, I think, after the weekend. Memphis beat Cincinnati in the Liberty Bowl. They're going to advance to the American Athletic Conference Championship game. That's this Saturday at 2:30. Geoff, you were there. What were your thoughts?
Well, as I watched the game, I was thinking Mike would look awfully good at Florida State.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. But, I mean, let's be honest. That's what everyone's thinking about. This is yesterday's news, sadly. It is an interesting phenomenon, is that all anyone is thinking about right now is the job issue. Like, that's what people are talking about. If you go walk out somewhere at the grocery store and someone walks up to you, they don't say, do you think they'll beat Cincinnati? They say, do you think he's gone? That's
you know what that happened to me last night at Penny Hardaway's radio show. I was getting ready to leave, and somebody walked up to me and asked, "What do you think? Like, is he leaving?"
Right,
and
exactly.
I told him not to get their hopes up.
So it's an interesting phenomenon in terms of the game. Listen, and I wrote this in a column today. The reason you want to coach is so you have moments like this, so you have years like this, so you have days like game day and that day and the SMU game. And so then you have games like Saturday where you win 3 straight and then you have a championship game and a chance for the Cotton Bowl and all of that. And so I thought it was, honestly, in terms of the game, I thought it was tougher than I expected it to be.
That's
Cincinnati's a good team.
Yeah.
Like the tight end's really good. Quarterback played well. Defense is tough. Exposed some issues with the Memphis secondary that we've seen.
We've seen it the whole season.
So took advantage of it, rather than exposed. And but no, it was a tough game, and I don't believe that it's hard to beat a team twice. I do believe it's hard to beat a good team twice.
Yeah.
I've seen the Patriots beat my beloved Buffalo Bills about 17 times. It's not hard to beat a bad team twice. It's hard to beat a good team twice, and Cincinnati's good. So I think it's anyone's game this Saturday. I'll be interested to see what Cincinnati does at quarterback, because truth is that kid played well. So I'll be interested to see what they do there. But it was a nice scene, and it was it's fun to watch what I think is the golden age of Memphis football.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting what Mike said yesterday about how lessons he learned in the last 2 conference championship games, about how he talked about how they got caught looking at the clock. And if you go back and think about the Cincinnati game, there was not a possession where I don't think that they were trying to score the football. They weren't trying. They were trying to not run out the clock. They were trying to win the game. That was very evident to me against Cincinnati, that they knew that they didn't want to, get caught with their pants down on a 3-point lead.
Now, and I don't want to take this away. I want to go to Drew's thoughts here. The question yesterday was basically, how come you don't win in December? And Mike broke it down into, and it's one of the criticisms of Mike, and he broke it down into 2 things. He said, listen, the bowl games are different than the championship games. The bowl games will set over, there are reasons why we haven't won those games, and then the championship games are, honestly, I think they just played better teams. Like, they played UCF. UCF was better than them both times. It wasn't like that's why they didn't win those games, because UCF was better. They also, by the way, lost to UCF before that during the course of the year. The bowl games are different because coaches leave and whatever else. But even there, the truth of the matter is typically they play better teams in the bowl games. And so so I don't know it's so much that they took their foot off the pedal against UCF last year. I think they stopped out scheming UCF, which they did in the first half.
And I think that's what I thought that was what he meant. He kind of got caught looking at the clock, trying to do what he was doing before, and it kind of caught them with their pants down a little bit. They got out adjusted. But Drew, what are your thoughts going into this Saturday? I mean, I think we're probably on the same page here. I mean, you're thinking a Memphis win, right?
Yeah, I if you made me pick, I would pick Memphis. I think what Geoff brought up about the quarterback situation is interesting because Desmond Ridder is he's somewhat of a threat with his legs too and his arm, but he has not been particularly impressive all year long. So and it sounds like that's the guy that they're going to at least start out with. So it'll be interesting to see if he has a short leash or what the deal is there. I'm sure they're not going to give away exactly what their game plan is going to be at that position before the game starts. But no, it is going to be hard to beat them twice. But I just think in general that Memphis is a better team. They have a better offense. And as we know, offense seems to be the difference maker in these AAC championship games.
Like Memphis is more explosive. Like they both have good running backs. Memphis is more of a threat to take it to the house.
Well, Memphis has more skill position guys. You got Antonio Gibson, DeMonte Coxey, Kenny Gainwell. Patrick Taylor didn't play particularly well, and I'm interested to see how they utilize him going forward. In that, especially Saturday against a team that completely stopped him every time he touched the ball. But I mean, Memphis has so many weapons. Joey Magnifico, who we haven't really talked about. I mean, he's been banged up, but it's like you just go down and down the line, and then the Cincinnati offense, I don't think they are as that deep. I think
they just have different. Like their best play, their running back is talented kid, probably going to be drafted this year. But he's a between the tackles. You know, he's get you 6 yards. He's not get you 60 yards. And Kenny Gainwell is get you 60 yards. Kenny Gainwell's as good as anyone you'll find in the SEC. He's just tremendous. Yeah. And then as again you saw it, like I thought Cincinnati did a really good job, but then Antonio Gibson, boom.
30 yards, yeah.
And the Memphis defense does deserve some credit because those turnovers were huge, and it was just on the offense to do something with them.
Finally.
They didn't.
Yes.
It took them a while to finally do that, but the defense stepped up and made a lot of big plays.
It was Bryce Huff and Joseph Dorcius, really, who kept them alive there in the second half. They're getting to the quarterback. It started after halftime. They were kind of conservative in the first half, and then they just started blitzing Bryant like crazy, and it really did rattle him. It was difference. It made the difference in the game.
By the way, did you think of the crowd?
I was a little disappointed, but I think it'll be better this weekend. I think people are going to be really riled up this weekend.
Really, I think it's going to be. I wasn't there, full disclosure, because I was flying home from Brooklyn, but I'm interested to see what the crowd looks like this weekend because they have to resell all the tickets.
Well, that's the thing. You don't start with any season ticket.
Right, I know. So do you think that plays a factor in the crowd?
I think it does play a factor.
Well, I think it'll be a better crowd. I'm optimistic that it will be a better crowd.
I will say, listen, I tend to be very protective of Memphis here, and I ask people to keep it in context that they're not a Power 5 team. That if you look outside the Power 5, they draw very well.
Yeah.
That if you look at what so there's a reason Cincinnati and Houston both built 40,000 seat stadiums, and that it's just the reality in which we live. Having said that, given that you're playing for what you're playing for, the chance to go to the Cotton Bowl, 11 wins.
Could be Mike Norvell's last home game.
After 5 or 6 great years in a row, you've sort of been building to this. The fact that you could only get 35 on a day like that.
It's disappointing.
I thought that was disappointing. And I do. Like I
don't think there was 35.
We're a big city, and you should be able to get more than 30 for that game. You should be able to get more than 35. And I'm not blaming anyone for how they chose to spend their Friday. Like people make their own choices and whatever. But I do think
that is a tough ask too, because you got
that's
like
the thing.
So many
family,
people are out of town
shopping. It's a terrible day, and so that goes into it. But it was interesting. I mean, listen, the Egg Bowl is a dreadful game this year, right? 2 bad teams, and I believe they packed the place, right? And so you just I tend to be very protective of Memphis in this regard. I guess I'm just hoping that, and I know they had huge problems with ticket sales because people were waiting on the phone and getting kicked off and waiting on the phone for an hour and a half. I hope that they successfully managed to sell 50,000 to this one. I would like it for everybody involved.
I don't think it'll be the SMU game. I don't think it'll be a sellout, but I think it'll be somewhere in between what we saw for Navy. I thought Navy was a good crowd, wasn't it? somewhere between Navy and SMU.
Well, I mean, even last Saturday, it wasn't embarrassing. It was perfectly healthy. Like, I mean, people spread out. It looked fine, but I would like more. Anyway.
So something else that happened earlier this week, I guess we can start talking about Mike Norvell's job possibilities. Ole Miss popped up after Matt Luke was fired. His name was one of many that have been mentioned, but a lot of local people have thrown his name out there as the lead for that job. I don't believe that's the case right now.
I don't think anyone's saying that now. I think everybody is saying he's going to Florida State, and signs suggest that he is. I'll be surprised at this point if he doesn't. It's the reason it's the kind of job that you wait for. It is one of the top 20 jobs in the country.
I think it's a top 10 job.
Yeah, you can recruit. You're recruiting against Dan Mullen, who's not a great recruiter at Florida. Miami's a mess. Yes, you got to deal with Clemson, and that's a problem. But the rest of the ACC is not great. And I mean, he would absolutely kill it. And so
you can win a national championship.
You can win a national championship.
Yeah, it is a national brand, and he will now be able to do something he couldn't do at Memphis, which is recruit nationally. He can recruit California, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. He can recruit in the North if he wants to. He can recruit the East Coast.
He can destroy it in Florida.
Yeah,
and absolutely. And he will be great. And I don't know how you can begrudge him if he goes. To me, the question is, and I don't mean this in badly, what I imagine will happen is sometime between now and, like with Fuente, it actually broke
the morning of the game.
Day of the game.
It was at kickoff. I was sitting up in the press box. So it wouldn't surprise
me if literally on Saturday, it's whenever someone decides, everyone knows now. I mean, it feels like everyone knows now or assumes. I guess everyone assumes now. And so but Mike has very clearly said, we're not doing this now. Mike's probably said, listen, if you put this out now, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's everybody I've talked to around him who have, everybody. Ever since all of this started with Florida State, how many ever weeks ago is Mike's focused on the conference championship. Right. Mike's focused on the conference championship.
And I'm sure he is. Now, that doesn't mean he hasn't had discussions, because I think he probably has had discussions. You would have had to have discussions if you want to get this job. And so, but he doesn't want it out. And so it won't be official until the day of or in the wake of or something. And so then Sunday he'll get in a plane and fly to Florida State, and we'll be writing about that. And then the immediately question will be, who's next? Well, there'll be two questions. One is, if it unfolds this way, and I'm now assuming it will he coach the Cotton Bowl if they win?
I don't think he will coach if they play Florida.
They clearly won't if they play Florida. That would be insane.
Yeah, that would just
ridiculous. Be crazy. If you're Florida State, you don't want your coach having to face Florida with the Memphis roster, with all due respect to as good as this roster is. So I don't actually think he's going to coach it either way. I think they've thought about it, but I don't think he's going to coach it either way. And then the question is who's next? And it seems weird to be talking about it, given that he hasn't even taken the job. But that's what people are. That's the next question, right, Drew? I mean, people walk up to you and they say, "Is he gone?" And the next question is, "Who's next?" Drew, who's next?
I don't know who's. To be honest,
who would you say?
I know who he.
I said to Jonah this morning, and I know people would freak out, but I really do think Lane Kiffin would take.
But
he's
going to Arkansas. I think most people think he's going to Arkansas.
And you got to question, would he be willing to leave FAU?
Yeah, it's not. Is it a big enough jump for him?
You have two internal candidates, in my opinion. Well, three internal candidates. You have Silverfield, who
Ryan Silverfield is the guy who's been with them the longest. He's been with them ever since he set foot here. He's a great recruiter. He's been instrumental in building that offensive line. He's deputy
associate head
coach. He's got lots of
every title
ties to significant people in Memphis who matter. I think he is the overwhelming internal candidate.
Yes, but there are two
more. Who
are
the other two?
Adam Fuller,
right?
He'll
makes sense. Dynamic guy, done a great job with the defense.
Great, charismatic. He reminds me a lot of Norvell.
Yeah.
Then behind him is Pete Limbo. Not a lot of people talk about Pete Limbo, but he's turned the special teams around. Former head coach of I think he's coached 2 non-Power 5 programs, so he knows the landscape. He knows how it works. Really impressive when you talk to him. Just a smart guy who gets it. But I think
he'd be a tougher sell.
Yeah, it's a tough sell, but I think he'll probably end up going wherever Mike goes. Beyond that,
I think Adam Fuller will be he is a dynamic guy. He will be
he's going to be a Power 5 defensive coordinator sooner rather than
somewhere
later.
Too, and he's good. And then beyond that, here's what's going to happen. Hugh Freeze is going to start texting people in Memphis to get his name out.
He already has.
And right. And so that will happen. And then there are other people, the head coach at App State. Can you get him? He makes about $800,000. Memphis can pay $3 million. So the question is if Silverfield's your bird in the hand, do you go out and take a shot at, for you, Drew, it was Lane Kiffin, but name who it was that you might, swing for the fence.
The big question for me is, how does Laird Veach factor into all of this? Because if it were Tom Bowen sitting here, I would know exactly what to tell you. If Tom Bowen were the AD, he would run a national search while still holding Silverfield right there.
And then David Rudd and Brad Martin would decide.
Yes. Exactly.
Let's be
honest.
clear.
Yeah, that's being completely honest. We know how that works.
David Rudd, Brad Martin, and
Tom Bowen would work with the search committee to present candidates that would include Ryan Silverfield and some national people. Is that going to be how the situation works?
By the way, with them there too. I think my own view is that it will be a group decision. It's a head football coach. Of course, they'll have input. I do think David Rudd's relationship with Laird Veach is dramatically better than his relationship with Tom Bowen. And you just hired him. It would make sense. And he's a football guy. Not that Tom Bowen isn't. It would make sense to listen to him. Don't you think?
Yeah. I think that Laird Veach is significantly more tapped into the college football.
This is his first test.
No, is it?
Well, you could argue that the Wiseman stuff is his first test.
Well, this is his yes, but at the same time, this is he has the future of
Fran Fraschilla kept talking about he's going to Fran, are you going to have Fran on?
Okay, yeah, I wanted to talk about this because I went up to Fran before the game in Brooklyn. And I'll try and keep this brief because we had the little halftime show with them in the Bahamas and people loved
Fran,
it.
And yeah,
they loved it. And I was just chatting with him and he was like, you know what? Text me on Monday or Tuesday and we can work it out and you can come on.
Guest on the podcast.
But then he got on TV. And to be fair, I have not seen the TV broadcast, but based off of what people are telling me on Twitter, he was saying things that just completely are not true.
Yeah, it was bad.
Well, what did he say that wasn't true?
So I sat down, I'm settled in for the game. I wasn't, what day was it? It was Thanksgiving, right? I didn't get to watch a ton of it. And then I'm like, what Fran say? I had to rewind it. He said that.
He said that Norvell is gone, which I think
Norvell
he
is gone.
I think it's likely true.
Whatever.
People took exception to the fact that he said that when Wiseman moved to Memphis, everybody knew that Penny was going to be the Memphis coach. Which is just not true.
That's not true.
And so the reality of it is I just decided that I was probably going to scrap that decision because either one of two things happened. People get mad that he's even on the podcast because they don't like him now, and they get mad, and I either have to say too bad I'm having him on anyway, or I have him on and
you confront him with these questions.
I have to be cordial, but I can never be firm enough to satisfy the people who are mad at him anyway. I just
bring him on.
Bring him on.
I'd bring him on anyway. So yes, he pointed. Well, I don't remember how we got on this, but he said that your AD is going to be tested by how he navigates the James Wiseman mess and his not hiring his next football coach. And I actually think that's kind of fair, right?
Yeah, that's fair to me. I think so.
So I don't know. It'll be.
But outside other candidates, there are a lot of good offensive coordinators out there. Mike Yurkich comes to mind just because I think he's great. But there are a lot of smart guys. Do you remember the last search? How much did Norvell's name come up early? I remember Bowen kind of kept it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No. What actually happened last time is David Rudd actually tweeted out, just hired a great football coach, literally, and he didn't say who it was. And then basically Pete Thamel and I got it exactly the same time. And but no, we didn't. We weren't thinking about Mike Norvell at all. Just like we weren't thinking about Justin Fuente at all. That's the thing. Is that now, mind you, it's a better job. It's a better job, certainly, than when Justin Fuente got it. But Mike Norvell has now made it a better job. It is a better job, and so maybe you're more inclined to get someone that you've heard of. Honestly, though, if you look around at a lot of places, whether it's Ohio State or Washington or Clemson, or they've hired people who are on board. Like they've just said, let's hire the in-house candidate, and it's worked out well. So there's that possibility.
Okay, now let's take a quick break for a brief message from our sponsors.
The Daily Memphian Tigers podcast is brought to you by FedEx. Possibilities. What we deliver by delivering.
All right, Drew. Bradley.
Wait, no, before we get to that, we should discuss. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we're not going to podcast before we get to the before the bowl selection. So let's talk about potential opponents. Let's just get ahead of ourselves.
I'm calling a
little bit.
I'm calling a shot.
Okay,
it's going to be Baylor. That's my called shot.
I would love that. That would be such a fun game, and it would be super high scoring. And that, honestly, that's what I'm cheering for.
I'm just focused on. Listen, for me, it's one game at a time, and I will say this about. Can I just say this about Mike Norvell? What he says, if you boil it down, is what coaches say, right? That we're just trying to get 1% better every day.
The 1% better
process.
Keep climbing.
And we're going to go 1-0, whatever.
Climbing.
I have to say this, and I was reading, it was a profile about another coach. I believe it when I say, I fundamentally believe that's true in anything you do, that the process matters more than the result. That whether you're a reporter, whether you're showing up at games, the process matters deeply. And it's why, you covered Nick, Drew. It's you're focused totally on the process. And I think it makes a huge difference. And I think it's one of the reasons they have been successful. I think the players totally buy into this. We are going to be 1% better. And so I joke about how I'm focused on it, but I think he sells it better than almost any coach that I've been around. That players, they come to live it and breathe it, and I think they take it part of their personality.
Awesome. Now, who do you want Memphis to play in the
But
Cotton
don't you
Bowl?
think that's true?
Yeah, no,
Isn't
I think
it's
it's because he legitimately believes it himself. I really do.
I want to play Notre Dame.
That would be awesome too.
Notre Dame. I'd like him to play Notre Dame. Huge national brand, and yet they're not that good.
I think that's a thumbs down. I don't think that'd be fun.
I want them.
Much better than Baylor. No one
people
are
going
the only people who want to play Baylor are people who actually watch football and they know that Baylor's fun.
I want to watch a 75 to 70
game. It wouldn't bring the
Alabama
ratings.
Would be fun. Alabama would be.
No, Alabama. The problem is they'll either play their players, in which case you've got those receivers against the secondary, or they don't, in which case it's kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
I would prefer, and I know a lot of people want to just play a brand, but I would prefer.
I don't think
Yeah, I want to play a team that's going to actually play their best players and put their best. That way you can, there's no asterisks or excuses or anything. You're just better than them if you're Memphis and you win.
I just think Florida and Georgia, I don't think Georgia's a great matchup. That defense is very good. They don't have a lot, Fromm probably wouldn't play, but I don't think Utah's a good matchup. I think Oregon would be fun. That'd be very fun.
I think that'd be a close game too.
Yeah, but Herbert wouldn't play probably, but I think the perfect matchup is Baylor. Because you don't want that asterisk. You want a fun game. You want to be able to say, hey, we won. I don't think Notre Dame is even good enough. How many losses do they have at this point?
Oh, I don't know that they'd make it. You're asking me who I'd like.
Okay.
Anyway, we can move on to basketball now. We had to discuss that though because we were never going to get
the nice thing about
basketball.
basketball is you don't have to worry about your coach leaving, and they're playing great. It's been really impressive. A lot of people were skeptical about Penny's ability to make these players good this early, and it's even with the buffeting that they have received from circumstances and events, they have looked awesome. It's been and a bunch of players who people had crossed off. Tyler because he's too small.
Did they cross those guys
Certainly
off?
Alo they did.
Alo, yes.
Absolutely. Tyler they didn't. Tyler had a pretty good freshman year, up and down, but Alo, people were ready to throw him overboard. They're absolutely.
You could argue that he is the most important player on the team right now with Wiseman out, and you
Precious
can make
has
that
been
argument.
pretty massive.
I
DJ's been really big,
but at the same time, he is the guy that when they need to slow the other, both of the big runs that Ole Miss and NC State made were stopped by Alex Lomax, which to me is impressive. He's definitely the guy that Penny trusts the most.
I also
right
think
now.
his spirit sort of is contagious with the team. Like when you see Alex playing that way and not caring about role and not caring about minutes and not caring, I think it makes it harder for everybody else. I really do believe that you've got Boogie, who's not playing point guard really, right? And you don't hear any complaining about that. You've got Lance, who's not playing big minutes. and probably thought he was going to play bigger minutes.
Tyler's taking fewer shots. And listen, I'm not behind the scenes, so maybe there's grumbling, but it doesn't feel like there is. Does it for you? No, there's no sign of it, at least. And it like you talk to all these, that was the question coming into the year, right? It was, well, are Alex and Tyler going to be able to accept what they're going to have to be, which is going to be role players? Well, first of all, they're the guys in at the end of the games right now because they've been better at guard. And second of all, it looks like the answer to that question is yes, they are willing to. Like Tyler talked to us again yesterday. He repeated all of the same stuff that Alo has said, which is, yeah, I'm perfectly fine as a role player. And they've both been more effective. There's no arguing that at all. Even in fewer minutes, their offensive ratings are up. Alo he's putting in, he's getting 10, 7, and 7 games
really good
back to back now. And it's, those two guys have been probably the most impressive and two of the most important pieces. Yes, minus Precious Achua and DJ, but to be honest, they're doing what we expected, right?
Yeah.
These Alo and Tyler are better than we
this.
expected.
And then obviously Boogie, that was huge. What he was able to do against NC State, that he looked confident, came out.
I want to see him do it a couple more times.
What was interesting to me is this whole thing that Penny said was that he thought the fact, did you buy into that? He said the fact that he wasn't able to be in the gym as much because they were traveling to Brooklyn and stuff, that helped him because he's such a gym rat that his legs were fresher because when he played NC State. Did you buy that? It was an interesting argument.
I believe it's true that they have to kick him out of the gym. I did. Right. I remember I did a story before the season started on Boogie about how he started working out as a middle schooler with a trainer in San Diego that was working with pros.
Right.
And he just would bother the crap out of this guy until he finally let Boogie train with him. So no, I believe that he's a total gym rat.
But I wonder if this.
I just don't know how much of that
thing
translates. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
So we don't have a podcast before Tennessee. Do we have a podcast before Tennessee?
There will not be a podcast next week. What day is Tennessee?
Saturday.
Yep.
So
this
no
is
podcast before Tennessee.
All right.
So we might as well talk about that. You want to do predictions like we've been doing, or what do you want to do, Jonah?
So we can. Well, what's the next 3 games? It's Bradley, UAB.
Bradley, UAB, and Tennessee. Let's do this because this is better. I talked about this with Gary on the radio yesterday too. So when they entered this 12-game stretch, and I wrote a story about this morning, go read it on dailymemphian.com, about how basically there are two seasons right now for Memphis basketball, this 12-game stretch and then the 19 games with James. When they went into this 12-game stretch, you would probably have taken 10-2, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree with that,
Yeah,
Jonah?
that sounds about right.
And so they had really, 5 games against top 100 Ken Palm type teams. They had Ole Miss, NC State, Tennessee, Georgia, and Wichita State.
Right.
So you're assuming that you go 3-2 in those games. Now, if I told you that they would finish 10-2, now that they're 2-0 with 3 games left,
I might still take it.
Would
and
you
the
still
reason
take
is that, first of all, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that they lose to Bradley or to UAB. It's not like
correct.
It would not be as crazy as Duke losing to Stephen F. Austin, right? So you're telling me I get to lock in. They're definitely win all the games they should win, and then in the 3 games that are top 100 teams that are remaining, which are Georgia, Tennessee,
and Wichita State,
you go 1-2, which would be a little disappointing, but. I hate to say it it fits my personality. I like to take the doomsday scenario off the table. I would lock that in.
I think they're going to go 11-1.
Right.
I do. I think because I'm not a believer in Georgia. Anthony Edwards could play amazing and Memphis could lose, but I think 9 times out of 10 Memphis beats Georgia, and so I think you're looking at. Wichita
win every other game, and then they might split Tennessee.
They're going to split Wichita State and Tennessee.
They're both places to play. Yes. They're really tough place to play.
And I think if they're going to lose any of those games, it's unfortunately, it's probably going to be Tennessee.
I think Tennessee, Georgia, Wichita State. I think they'll lose all 3.
Really?
So he would lock in the 10-2.
You would also take 10-2.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to lose all 3. That's not why. I don't believe they will lose all 3. I'm just taking it in because I I'd take the doomsday scenario off the table. That's why I'm doing it. But yes, I don't think they're going to lose all three of those games.
I think people are looking down on that Tulane game too. I wouldn't totally discount
Tulane is over 200 in Ken Palm. I know they're winning games. They're playing
He just
nobody.
likes KJ Lawson. He's just got a soft spot.
Yeah, I do.
He
I do.
thinks
Ron
he's going to be
Hunter
KJ
probably.
revenge.
Love Ron Hunter. I do think that could be.
KJ
Why not?
revenge
Why
game.
could it? It's his
Exactly.
first time
That's
back
what
in
he's
Memphis. He's going to be on the FedEx Forum for the first time. The last time he played at the FedEx Forum, he played Tulane. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Well, that's a popular opinion, but at the same time, or to say that
I think that's going to be a
that's
tougher
a
game
popular.
than you think.
It's a popular thing now to say that Tulane isn't going to finish last because Hunter came out and said that.
He's a
before the
really good
season.
coach. I
And
think
he
it's going to be
is,
tougher
but
than you think.
I-
I'm not going to say they're going
They're
to
going to
lose.
breeze past Tulane.
I'll remember that.
Okay.
Lock it in. Remember that, Natalie. She didn't remember. She didn't know what we're talking about.
Lock it in.
All right, we're going to wrap it up for today. You can follow us all on Twitter. Drew, what's your Twitter? Give it to the people.
Drew Hill _DM.
Jeff.
It is Geoff with a G, Geoff _ Calkins, Calkins.
He has enough followers. We
Yeah,
don't
he
need to
doesn't
help
need
him
any
out.
more. Just follow me at _ Jonah Jordan. I think that'll do it for today. You can find the Daily Memphian podcasts, which are powered by the OM Network, anywhere you find your podcasts, whether it be iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify.
We deliver tickets, team merchandise, and everything you need for the game. But what you really get is so much more.
FedEx Delivery.
Game day spirit. What we deliver by delivering.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.